The morning sun glinted off the glass doors of the federal courthouse as people gathered outside, phones ready to capture any glimpse of the famous tech billionaire. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky. This wasn't just another business lawsuit, this was Elon Musk versus his own shareholders, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. At exactly 9:15 a.m., a black Tesla pulled up to the curb. The crowd's murmuring grew louder as Musk stepped out, straightening his dark blue suit. Unlike his usual casual attire at product launches, today he looked every bit the serious businessman. His face showed no worry, though his eyes darted quickly across the crowd before he nodded to his lawyers walking beside him. "Mr. Musk, do you think you'll win?" shouted a reporter from the crowd. Musk kept walking, his slight smile never wavering. One of his lawyers leaned in to whisper something, and Musk nodded again. He had been through tough spots before: rocket explosions, production delays, stock crashes, but legal battles were different. Numbers and engineering problems could be solved with hard work and clever thinking, but courts followed their own rules. Inside the courthouse, away from the cameras, Musk's confident stride slowed just a bit. His team had warned him about Judge Eleanor Winters. "She doesn't like Sherman," his lead lawyer had told him the night before. "And she definitely doesn't like when business people think they're above the law." The case seemed straightforward enough on paper. Tesla shareholders claimed Musk had lied about how many cars the company could make, causing them to lose money when the truth came out. Musk knew different. Making cars wasn't like making phones. Problems popped up that no one could predict. He hadn't lied. He'd been optimistic. There was a difference. As Musk and his team entered courtroom 3B, the room fell silent. Reporters scribbled notes, lawyers from both sides arranged papers, and in the middle of it all sat Judge Winters, her gray hair pulled back tightly, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed documents. Without looking up, she seemed to sense Musk's entrance. "We'll begin in 5 minutes," she announced to the room, still not lifting her eyes from her papers. Musk took his seat at the defense table, leaning back slightly as his lawyers unpacked their briefcases around him. Across the aisle, the shareholders' lawyers, a team from a top New York firm, exchanged confident glances. They had prepared for months, gathering every tweet, every email, every public statement Musk had made about Tesla's production goals. "All rise," called the bailiff as Judge Winters finally looked up, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Musk. For just a second, something flickered across her face: disapproval, perhaps, or simply recognition that the man whose face appeared on magazine covers now stood in her courtroom. "Be seated," she said, her voice crisp and cool. "Case number 2023 CV 48921, Tesla shareholders versus Elon Musk and Tesla Motors." She looked directly at Musk again. "I expect this trial to proceed efficiently and professionally. My courtroom is not a stage for performances or distractions." Musk's lead lawyer stood up. "We understand, Your Honor." "Good," Judge Winters replied. "Opening statements, please." As the shareholder's lawyer approached the podium, Musk watched carefully. The man spoke clearly, painting a picture of a reckless CEO who made promises he couldn't keep, who played with people's money while chasing impossible dreams. With each word, Judge Winters nodded slightly, her pen moving across her notepad. When Musk's lawyer stood to speak, Judge Winters interrupted almost immediately. "Counsel, are you suggesting that Mr. Musk's statements about production capabilities were not meant to be taken literally by investors?" Her eyebrow raised slightly. "Your Honor, we're suggesting that in the context of a growing industry." "Yes or no would suffice," she cut in. Musk shifted in his seat. This wasn't going as planned. He had faced tough questions before, but usually in settings where he controlled the conversation. Here, in this wood-paneled room, with its American flag and stern-faced judge, he was just another defendant. The rules were different, and Judge Winters was making that very clear. As the day continued, one thing became obvious to everyone in the room. This judge wasn't impressed by Musk's fame or fortune, and she was going to make sure he knew it. The second day of the trial started with a tense feeling in the air. People whispered as they found their seats, and even the usual courthouse workers slowed down to peek inside the room. Musk sat at the defense table, scrolling through his phone until his lawyer gently touched his arm, signaling him to put it away before the judge arrived. "All rise," the bailiff called out, and everyone stood as Judge Winters walked in, her black robe swinging slightly with each step. Her face looked just as serious as yesterday, maybe even more so. "Be seated," she said, settling into her large chair and adjusting her glasses. "Let's continue where we left off." Musk's lawyer stood up first, ready to call their first witness, an expert who would explain why making electric cars was so difficult and unpredictable. But before the witness could even sit down, Judge Winters started asking questions that made it clear she wasn't buying their side of the story. "So you're saying," she said, looking over her glasses at the witness, "that it's impossible to make accurate production estimates? Strange, since other car companies seem to manage just fine." The expert tried to explain the difference between traditional cars and what Tesla was trying to do, but Judge Winters kept cutting him off. Musk watched, his fingers tapping silently on the table. His main lawyer leaned over. "Stay calm," he whispered. "This is just her style." But when it was time for Musk himself to take the stand, things got even worse. He walked to the witness box, raised his right hand for the oath, and sat down, trying to look relaxed, though everyone could see he was on edge. "Mr. Musk," Judge Winters began, "you told your investors that Tesla would produce 5,000 Model 3 cars per week by the end of 2017. Is that correct?" "Yes, that was our goal," Musk answered. "Not your goal, Mr. Musk, your promise. Your statement of fact to people who then invested their money based on what you said." Musk took a breath. In the car industry, especially with new technology, targets air. "Please just answer the question," Judge Winters interrupted. "Did you meet that production number?" "No, but..." "And when did you actually reach that number?" "Mid-2018, Musk said, his voice getting tighter. Judge Winters nodded and wrote something down. 6 months late. "And during those 6 months, did you continue to tell investors that you were on track?" "We communicated our challenges openly," Musk started to explain, sitting up straighter. The judge let out a small laugh that wasn't really a laugh at all. "Mr. Musk, perhaps in your world, promises don't need to be kept. But in this courtroom, words matter." People in the audience glanced at each other. Someone coughed. The shareholders' lawyers tried not to look too pleased. As the questioning went on, Judge Winters didn't let up. When Musk tried to explain how building a car factory was like manufacturing the machine that manufactures, she shook her head. "Interesting metaphors don't change facts, Mr. Musk. And the fact is, you told people one thing and delivered another." By lunch break, everyone could see that Musk was frustrated. His jaw was tight, and the confident smile from yesterday was gone. His team huddled around him in a corner of the hallway outside, speaking in low voices. A few reporters tried to get close enough to hear, but security kept them back. "She's not even trying to understand," Musk said to his lawyers, just loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. When court started again after lunch, Judge Winters seemed even more determined to pick apart every answer Musk gave. When he explained that production problems came from battery suppliers not meeting demands, she asked why he hadn't planned for that. "Running a company means planning for problems, doesn't it?" she asked, her voice making it clear she thought she already knew the answer. "We did plan," Musk said, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself. "But some problems you can't predict until you're actually building at scale." "Mr. Musk," Judge Winters said, leaning forward, "I've heard similar excuses from many business people in this courtroom. They all seem to think that intentions matter more than results." Musk pressed his lips together, fighting to keep his face neutral. He had faced tough questions from reporters, angry investors, and government officials before. But this was different. In those situations, he could push back, explain fully, control the conversation. Here, Judge Winters controlled everything, and she was making sure everyone knew it. As the day ended, Musk's team looked worried. The judge had made her opinion pretty clear, and it wasn't good for them. Tomorrow would be even harder. By the third day, news of the trial had spread even further. The line to get into the courtroom stretched down the hallway. People whispered about how the famous Elon Musk was finally getting put in his place. TV news shows ran special segments about the case, with experts debating whether Tesla would survive if Musk lost. Musk arrived earlier than usual that morning, walking quickly past the reporters who shouted questions. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept much. His usual confidence seemed shaken. Inside, he sat with his legal team, all of them speaking in hushed tones as they flipped through papers and showed him documents on their tablets. "Just stick to the facts," his lead lawyer told him. "Don't try to explain the whole vision thing. She's not interested in that." Musk nodded, but there was tension in his shoulders. People who knew him well could see he was struggling to hold back. Explaining his vision was exactly what Musk always did when faced with doubters. Judge Winters entered the courtroom looking refreshed and determined. She nodded to the jury and then turned her attention directly to Musk's defense team. "Counsel, you have 30 minutes to finish your direct examination. I suggest you use it wisely," she said, tapping her watch. Musk's lawyer stood and continued questioning him about Tesla's production challenges, but it was clear the judge was growing impatient with each answer. When Musk began explaining how building the Model 3 was different from any other car in history, Judge Winters cut him off. "Mr. Musk, we're not here for a TED talk," she said, causing several people in the audience to stifle laughs. "Please just answer the specific question." The shareholders' lawyers seemed to grow more confident with each passing hour. During cross-examination, they showed emails where Musk had pushed his team to announce ambitious goals, despite internal warnings that they might be impossible to meet. "Mr. Musk, did you or did you not write in this email?" And I quote, "We need to announce the higher production target. Wall Street needs to see we're serious," asked the lead attorney for the shareholders. Musk looked at the email on the screen. "That's taken out of context," he began. The judge interrupted again. "Yes or no, Mr. Musk? Did you write those words?" "Yes, but—" "Thank you. Next question," Judge Winters said firmly. By lunchtime, the mood in Musk's camp was grim. Outside in the hallway, reporters noticed how his usual energetic stride had been replaced by a slower, almost defeated walk. His PR team tried to create a barrier around him, but everyone could see the strain on his face. When court resumed, things went from bad to worse. The shareholders' lawyer had saved their strongest evidence for the afternoon session, showing a series of public statements Musk had made alongside internal documents that seemed to directly contradict them. Judge Winters leaned forward during this presentation, nodding slightly as each new contradiction was shown. When Musk's lawyer tried to object, claiming the documents were being misrepresented, Judge Winters waved him off. "I've heard more coherent arguments from first-year law students," she remarked, causing a ripple of shocked whispers through the courtroom. Several jurors shifted uncomfortably, while others tried to hide their reactions. The statement hung in the air. Even the shareholders' lawyers looked surprised at the judge's open mockery. Musk sat perfectly still, his face carefully blank, but anyone watching closely could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. For the rest of the afternoon, Judge Winters continued her harsh treatment. When Musk's team tried to introduce evidence about other car companies facing similar production delays, she dismissed it as irrelevant. When they called a former Tesla engineer to explain the technical challenges, she interrupted repeatedly with skeptical questions. By the end of the day, news channels were running headlines like "Judge puts Musk in his place" and "Tesla trial, billionaire meets his match." Financial analysts were predicting a devastating loss for Musk and Tesla, with one famous stock commentator declaring, "This could be the beginning of the end for Musk's empire." As Musk left the courthouse, surrounded by his team, the crowd of onlookers had grown even larger. People held up their phones, capturing his expression, no longer the confident tech visionary, but a man who looked cornered and exhausted. Back at his hotel that evening, Musk closed the door on his worried team and the constant phone calls. For the first time in years, the man known for his unshakable belief in his own vision appeared to be out of answers. But appearances can be deceiving. The hotel suite had turned into a makeshift war room. Pizza boxes and coffee cups covered every surface. It was almost midnight, but nobody was thinking about sleep. Musk stood by the window, looking out at the city lights while his legal team argued behind him. "We're getting crushed in there," said his oldest lawyer, throwing a legal pad onto the table. "That judge has made up her mind already." Another lawyer nodded. "We should consider settlement options. Cut our losses." Musk turned around slowly. The team fell silent, surprised by what they saw. Instead of defeat, his eyes showed the same intense focus they'd seen before SpaceX launches or Tesla reveals. "No," he said simply, We're not settling. He walked to the table and moved aside some pizza boxes to clear a space. Then he picked up a marker and started writing on the back of a large document. We've been playing by their rules, he said. We've been defensive. Apologetic. He underlined the word defensive twice. That ends now. One of the younger lawyers looked confused, but the judge doesn't understand what we built, Musk interrupted, so we'll make her understand. For the next hour, Musk outlined a completely new approach. His energy seemed to grow with each minute. The lawyers exchanged glances, some doubtful, some intrigued. By 1 a.m., they were all standing around the table, arguing about details but agreeing on the core strategy. This is risky, warned the lead attorney. If we switch approaches mid-trail, it could backfire. Everything I've ever done was risky, Musk replied with a small smile. Rockets, electric cars, solar roofs, all risky, all worth it. He tapped the paper where he'd sketched out the new plan. Call our technical team back at headquarters. We need every production record, every engineering challenge document, every supply chain analysis, everything. The night grew into early morning. People came and went, technical experts joined by video call, explaining complex manufacturing processes while Musk translated them into simpler terms for the lawyers. Food delivery arrived at 3 a.m. for the hungry team. By 5 a.m., red-eyed but focused, Musk stepped into the shower while his team organized the mountain of new evidence they would present. The hotel staff looked bewildered at the activity as they delivered more coffee. Should we let him sleep longer? Asked one lawyer, looking at his watch. Court doesn't start until 9. The lead attorney shook his head. He's been up all night before big launches, said it helps in focus. Sure enough, by 6:30 a.m., Musk emerged from his bedroom looking surprisingly fresh in a crisp new suit. He reviewed the final preparations with his team as they ate breakfast. Remember, he told them, we're not just defending ourselves anymore. We're going to show her exactly why Tesla is different from every other car company in history. One lawyer still looked worried. The judge might not even allow this new evidence. She's been pretty clear about keeping things moving quickly. Musk nodded. That's why our first move is crucial. We need to make her curious, make her want to see what we found. As they packed up their materials, one of the legal assistants who had been quietly working in the corner looked up. I've been on a lot of big cases, she said. I've never seen a client this involved in the strategy. Musk smiled slightly. Most clients aren't building rockets in their spare time. The team headed down to the hotel lobby, carrying boxes of documents and looking tired but determined. Outside, reporters were already gathering, hoping to catch Musk looking defeated after yesterday's courtroom disaster. Instead, they were surprised to see him walk out with his head high, a confident half-smile on his face. The cameras flashed as he got into the car, reporters shouting questions that he didn't answer. What happened? One reporter asked a member of Musk's team. He looks different today. The team member just smiled. You might want to be in court this morning. It's going to be interesting. As their cars pulled away toward the courthouse, Musk reviewed his notes one last time. The strategy was risky. Judges don't like surprises, and this judge already seemed to dislike him. But he had faced tougher challenges and come back stronger. The courthouse was just 10 minutes away. The biggest gamble of Musk's career was about to begin. The courtroom was packed when Musk and his team arrived. People squeezed together on the wooden benches, whispering as they walked in. Everyone had heard about yesterday's disaster and wanted to see what would happen next. The shareholders' lawyers were already seated, looking relaxed and confident. Judge Winters entered the room, her face stern as usual. Good morning, she said, looking at her watch. Let's continue where we left off. But before the shareholders' lawyer could stand, Musk's lead attorney rose quickly. Your Honor, we request permission to present new evidence that came to light overnight. Judge Winters frowned. New evidence? This late in the proceedings? Yes, Your Honor. We believe it's crucial to understanding the full context of this case. The shareholders' lawyers immediately objected. This is completely inappropriate, Your Honor. They're trying to change strategies mid-trail because they're losing. Judge Winters looked annoyed but curious. What exactly is this evidence? Musk's lawyer stepped forward. We've assembled the complete technical documentation of Tesla's production challenges during the period in question. Not summaries, but the actual engineering records, supply chain analyses, and manufacturing data. The judge's eyebrow raised slightly. And why wasn't this presented earlier? It required significant time to compile, Your Honor. Our technical team worked through the night to organize it properly. Judge Winters glanced at Musk, who met her gaze steadily. Something had changed since yesterday. The defeated look was gone. After a long moment, she nodded. I'll allow it, but be brief. This court's time is valuable. For the next 30 minutes, Musk's team presented a completely different picture of Tesla's production challenges. They showed emails and documents that had been quoted by the shareholders' lawyers, but now with the full context around them. They displayed detailed timelines of manufacturing hurdles that no other car company had ever faced. The courtroom grew silent as people leaned forward to see the evidence. Even Judge Winters had stopped interrupting, her eyes focused on the screens as Musk's team methodically built their case. This email, said Musk's lawyer, displaying a message that had been damaging yesterday, was sent just hours before our supplier in Mexico informed us that they couldn't deliver the promised battery components. The full thread shows Mr. Musk immediately ordering design changes to work around the problem, not hiding it. The shareholders' lawyers looked increasingly uncomfortable. They shuffled papers, whispered urgently to each other, and kept raising objections that Judge Winters now waved away. Continue, she told Musk's team, her voice noticeably less harsh than before. The most powerful moment came when they presented internal videos of the factory during the troubled production period. The footage showed engineers sleeping under desks, Musk himself working on the assembly line at 3 a.m., and teams cheering when they solved particularly difficult problems. Tesla wasn't hiding problems from investors, Musk's lawyer explained. They were fighting through unprecedented challenges while being completely transparent about the difficulties in their public statements. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The story everyone thought they knew was changing before their eyes. Some of the jurors were nodding slightly, clearly impressed by the dedication shown in the videos. Judge Winters leaned forward in her chair, studying the evidence with new interest. When she spoke, her tone had shifted. Mr. Musk, she said, looking directly at him, why didn't you present this context earlier? Musk stood up, his voice calm and clear. Your Honor, I think I misunderstood what this case was really about. I thought it was about numbers and deadlines. But it's really about whether we acted in good faith during an incredibly difficult time. She watched him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Proceed. As the morning continued, the entire mood of the courtroom had changed. The shareholders' lawyers attempted to regain control, but their carefully prepared arguments now seemed hollow against the mountain of detailed evidence Musk's team was presenting. By the lunch break, reporters were rushing out to update their stories. The headlines were changing from Musk cornered in court to surprising turnaround in Tesla trial and new evidence challenges narrative in Musk case. Judge Winters left the bench without her usual curt remarks. Instead, she paused for a moment, looking thoughtfully at the evidence still displayed on the screens, before disappearing into her chambers. Outside in the hallway, Musk's team gathered around him, their faces showing cautious optimism for the first time in days. The battle wasn't over, but something fundamental had shifted in their favor. After lunch, the energy in the courtroom had completely changed. People who had come expecting to see Musk's downfall were now leaning forward, eager to hear what would happen next. Even the courthouse staff seemed more interested than usual, finding excuses to linger in the room. The shareholders' lawyers returned looking tense, huddling together and speaking in urgent whispers. Their confident smiles from earlier were gone. Across the aisle, Musk's team arranged their materials calmly, the morning's success giving them a new sense of purpose. Judge Winters entered and took a seat, her face unreadable. Let's continue, she said, her voice neutral. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of letting his lawyers continue, Musk himself stood up. Your Honor, he said, I'd like to request an opportunity to address the court directly on some technical matters. A murmur ran through the crowd. This was unusual and potentially risky. His lawyers exchanged nervous glances, but didn't object. They had clearly discussed this move beforehand. Judge Winters studied him for a long moment. Just yesterday, she had shut down his every attempt to explain. Today, after seeing the new evidence, she seemed less certain. "Very well, Mr. Musk," she finally said. "But keep it relevant to the case." Musk walked to the front of the courtroom. Without notes or slides, he began to explain the fundamental challenges of mass-producing electric vehicles in a way no one had heard before. He didn't use fancy technical terms or complicated business language. Instead, he spoke like he was explaining it to a friend. "Building a car factory isn't like building an office building," he said, his hands moving as he spoke. "It's more like building a living organism. Every part depends on every other part." He described how traditional car manufacturers had spent decades perfecting their assembly lines for gas engines, but Tesla had to create everything from scratch. He explained supply chain problems in simple terms, making complex manufacturing challenges easy to understand. "When we promised 5,000 cars a week, we had suppliers from 3 continents all telling us they could deliver on time. We believed them because we had to. There was no plan B for some of these parts. Nobody else in the world made them." As he spoke, even the shareholders' lawyers found themselves nodding occasionally. The technical details that had seemed boring on paper came alive through his explanation. Judge Winters had stopped looking at her watch and was asking thoughtful questions. "So when you discovered these suppliers couldn't deliver," she asked, "why not immediately inform investors?" "We did inform them of challenges," Musk replied, "but we were also working day and night to solve the problems. Every time we thought we had a solution, we'd run into another issue. It wasn't one big problem. It was hundreds of small ones, all connected." He told the story of how engineers had slept in the factory for weeks trying to fix the robotic assembly line, how they had ultimately torn out equipment worth millions of dollars because it wasn't working, replacing advanced robots with human workers to keep production moving. "Our investors knew we were facing challenges," he said. "What they were betting on wasn't a perfect timeline, it was our ability to solve problems that nobody had solved before." For over an hour, he continued his explanation, occasionally using simple hand gestures to illustrate complex processes. The courtroom remained completely silent except for his voice. Even the court reporter seemed fascinated, typing rapidly to keep up with his words. Judge Winters, who had begun the trial looking down at Musk with open skepticism, was now leaning forward, engaged in what had become almost a conversation between them. Her questions became more insightful, less accusatory. "So what you're saying is that the delays weren't due to deception, but due to the inherent unpredictability of creating an entirely new manufacturing system." "Exactly," Musk nodded. "We weren't hiding problems, we were drowning in them, fighting through them, and ultimately solving them, just later than we'd hoped." By mid-afternoon, something remarkable had happened. The formal trial atmosphere had transformed into something closer to a masterclass on electric vehicle production. Jurors who had looked bored earlier in the week were now taking notes. Reporters were scribbling frantically, realizing the story had completely changed. When Musk finally returned to his seat, a strange silence hung over the room. Everyone sensed they had witnessed something unusual, not just a clever legal strategy, but a genuine moment of understanding. The judge's face showed not the dismissive expression of previous days, but thoughtful consideration. The shareholder's lead lawyer stood to begin cross-examination, but even he seemed to realize the momentum had shifted dramatically. The final day of the trial arrived with a buzz of excitement. The courthouse steps were crowded with people hoping to get inside. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the clear blue sky. Everyone wanted to see how this dramatic story would end. Inside, the courtroom was packed. People who couldn't find seats stood against the walls. Law students, business executives, and curious members of the public had all come to witness the verdict. Musk sat at the defense table looking calm but alert, occasionally speaking quietly with his lawyers. The shareholders' team looked nervous. Their once solid case had been shaken by the events of the previous days. They shuffled papers and whispered urgently to each other, making last-minute adjustments to their closing arguments. A hush fell over the room as the door to the judge's chambers opened. Judge Winters walked to her seat, her face giving nothing away. She adjusted her glasses and looked out over the crowded courtroom. "Before we begin closing arguments," she said, I want to remind everyone that this court's job is to consider all evidence fairly, regardless of who presents it or when it appears in the proceedings. She paused, looking directly at Musk for a moment. Many people in the room held their breath, wondering if this was good news for him or bad. The closing arguments that followed were like night and day compared to the opening statements. The shareholders' lawyer spoke first, trying to rebuild their case by focusing on dates and numbers, but the confident tone from earlier in the trial was gone. When Musk's lawyer stood to deliver their closing argument, he spoke with quiet confidence, weaving together the technical evidence and human stories into a compelling narrative of innovation against impossible odds. When both sides had finished, Judge Winters announced she would take time to consider before ruling. "Court will reconvene at 2 p.m. for my decision," she said, and left the room. Those 3 hours felt like days. Musk and his team waited in a small conference room, picking at sandwiches nobody really wanted to eat. Outside, reporters speculated wildly about what would happen. Financial analysts made predictions about how Tesla's stock would react to different outcomes. At exactly 2 p.m., everyone returned to their seats. The room fell silent as Judge Winters entered, carrying a folder with her written opinion. Her face was serious as she took her seat and looked out at the crowded courtroom. "This case," she began, "has taken some unexpected turns." She adjusted her glasses and continued, "When these proceedings began, I had certain preconceptions about what had occurred at Tesla during the period in question. I believed this was a straightforward case of a company making promises it couldn't keep." Musk sat perfectly still, his expression neutral. The shareholders' lawyers leaned forward hopefully. "The evidence presented in the past 2 days has substantially altered my understanding of the situation," Judge Winters continued. "This court has a duty to approach each case with an open mind, regardless of personal opinions about the parties involved." She looked directly at Musk. "Mr. Musk, your detailed explanation of the manufacturing challenges Tesla faced was illuminating. This court now understands that the production delays were not the result of deception, but rather the unavoidable growing pains of creating something genuinely new." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The shareholders' lawyers exchanged worried glances. After careful consideration of all evidence, Judge Winters said, her voice clear and firm, "This court finds in favor of the defendant on the majority of claims. While Tesla did miss production targets, the evidence does not support the allegation that Mr. Musk or Tesla intentionally misled investors." The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Musk closed his eyes briefly, the only sign of emotion he allowed himself. His legal team exchanged smiles and handshakes. The shareholders' lawyers stared down at their notes, disappointment evident in their postures. As Judge Winters continued reading the specifics of her ruling, financial news alerts began lighting up phones around the world. Tesla's stock price jumped dramatically. Social media exploded with reactions. The business world was stunned by the unexpected turnaround. After the formal proceedings ended, reporters surrounded Musk on the courthouse steps, shouting questions about the verdict. He raised his hand for quiet and spoke just a few sentences. "The facts speak for themselves," he said simply. "At Tesla, we've always been focused on building the future, not fighting about the past." With that, he walked to his waiting car, leaving behind a trail of stunned reporters and a legal victory few had thought possible just days earlier. Inside her chambers, Judge Winters watched through the window as the crowd dispersed. She had built her reputation on being tough but fair. Today, she had lived up to that standard in the most challenging case of her career. She had allowed her mind to be changed by evidence, even when it meant admitting her initial judgment had been wrong. As Musk's car pulled away from the courthouse, both he and the judge had learned something valuable about each other and about the true nature of justice.